It must be done. We have to accept this. Things will be cut from the Wheel of Time for the TV show. The real question is what should be cut. Now, I've gone through quite a bit of this series again. I've been going all over things that if you lifted them out, you'd have to make minimal changes to other plot lines. I've been thinking about what has the least amount of character development dependent on it, which entire characters have least amount of influence on other characters, and all this blending together to let me figure out what can you straight up lift from the Wheel of Time and not affect the overall story that much. On the other end of things, I've also compiled a list of things you certainly cannot touch. Don't remove any of it. In fact, maybe even emphasize some more. Learn from Game of Thrones weaknesses and build these up maybe even a little more than they're built in the books themselves. There's no reason you can't improve the show over the books. Boy, is that wishful thinking. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump on in and list a few things I think are okay to remove and would save you quite a bit of screen time, and go over the things you must not remove. In addition to that, the first thing I'll say is how they should structure the show itself. In my opinion, you can't do a book a season. That's 14 seasons, 14 years of making this show. Let's say you hire an 18-year-old age-appropriate actor to play Rand. By the time you're done filming, he's 32. No one will sign on for that. So in my opinion, maybe give Eye of the World and A Memory of Light their own seasons. Aside from that, 2 books per season. That way you have a realistic time frame, not every actor is aging an extreme amount, and it all will end up kind of fitting better. I do think you can cut each book to half a season reasonably. I will keep all spoilers for a minimum for this video, so for those of you who have not finished the series or even started it, feel free to watch reasonably safely. I'm going to keep it as vague as possible. So first up, in what can be cut. In my opinion, the entire Morghese plotline. It doesn't affect much else. After she really starts going on her own adventure, nothing on that adventure has much impact outside of her character and the development of herself. There's one big thing later on she does, but you can easily substitute that with another kind of noble character. So I don't feel much pressure to keep Morghese in. Don't get me wrong, I really like her storyline. It has some of the darkest elements in all of the Wheel of Time. That being said, it's really self-contained, and it's something that can pretty easily be lifted. So this in itself will be the least impactful lift from the entire series I'm about to recommend. Next up is more of a vague thing that's certainly not a spoiler in any way, shape, or form, and that's really reduce on the random political drama. There's a heavy influence on some pretty interesting political drama throughout the Wheel of Time, but a whole lot of it really leads to nothing, and it's okay to just kind of cut those things. You can easily summarize them, just have offhanded sentences, don't focus on them as much as the story. In addition, I believe this will help Wheel of Time stand apart from Game of Thrones a little bit more. Game of Thrones really focuses on the political drama at times, and if you want to separate from that, focus even heavier on character for the Wheel of Time. Devote your screen time to that rather than the political drama that's going on. That way we can have even more solid characters than Game of Thrones already has, which would be quite the achievement. And now is probably going to be my second most controversial pick. The romances. Reduce them. Don't eliminate them, but in my opinion, for romance on TV, less can certainly be more. Overly developed romance can be a little boring. At times can grind an entire episode to a screeching halt. These romances can easily be done with offhanded looks, smaller things like that, more just direct action from the characters, and it would kind of make sense. If you're in a really high pressure situation, just taking direct action towards whoever you're interested in, it fits the situation. Just, okay, we could die in a few days, I'm gonna let this person know how I feel. Yes, it's less nuanced than how the books handle it, but honestly, some of the romances in the books aren't executed that well. And I feel like if we just handled them in a more natural characters being around each other way, overall it could clean up some of the more rough edges of some of the character relationships in the series. There are notoriously not liked romances in the Wheel of Time, and this could easily void that problem. This is just a really quick one, and it's going to be my least controversial pick by far. Not a big spoiler, but at a certain point in the series, zombies or zombie-type things show up. Cut that entirely. It's not going to save you much time, just cut it. Cut it entirely. And this will be most controversial pick. Cut the number of Forsaken in half or even more. A lot of these characters can be combined and just handle all the plot lines. It'll save you a ton of time in creating the show, casting, writing, keeping all these people straight. Cut it down to between 5 or 7 Forsaken, and I feel like it'll make it a lot more digestible for people who are just coming into the show. Keeping track of all 13 is jarring and difficult. Combine, reduce, make it more simple, streamlined, and straightforward. That way you can really develop their characters and who they are as servants of the Shadow. I think that would really benefit the series. I know people are going to argue with me down below, saying how they all serve their own purpose, but that's great for a book. But for a show, when individual pages start really mattering in terms of screen time, you need to condense. And I think if we cut the number of them in half, it would certainly help us a lot in the overall slog of the series. The Seanchan must stay. This is kind of transitioning into things I really think should stay as much as they are prevalent, and Seanchan is a staple. One, the Seanchan will generate controversy for the show. People are going to talk about that. The whole having women being leashed, the racial aspect of it, all these things will mix together to really generate some controversy for the show, and I think, honestly, that's a good thing. Making headlines helps, as long as it's not too offensive, and I really don't think the Seanchan will be. They'll walk that line really nicely as long as they're written well, which I believe Rafe Judkins can do. So keep the Seanchan in, cut the Shaido almost entirely out, if not completely. Now the next thing, and this is the number one thing that must stay in for me. I know this goes against exactly what I just said with the Shaido, but every other aspect of the Aiel and their culture must stay and be built up as much as possible. I want the Aiel culture to be at the forefront. I want them to be the culture we spend the most screen time with by far. If we really immerse this show in their culture, it will help the show feel extremely different, and it'll allow Wheel of Time to really be its own entity with a unique feel. One of the biggest flaws in Game of Thrones, in my opinion, is not giving the Dothraki culture enough time to shine. And Wheel of Time can learn from that and let the Aiel take the forefront of cultural development for its series. I'm all for that. The next must not be cut and maybe emphasize even more aspect for me is the madness. The overall madness of Sagadin the Taint. All of this is again something that helps Wheel of Time stand out from every other fantasy book out there. This aspect of insanity, the loss of self-control, this building tension. It can be something that helps build suspense for free for the entire series. If you're a good writer, this kind of insanity, this madness is a gold mine for just building tension and having amazing character moments. Keep that madness in, hit that gas pedal on the madness. Let it really come to the forefront and do whatever you can with sound design, visuals, and great acting to make it come across clearly for the viewers, because it will certainly build tension once again. And Wheel of Time needs tension building. That's what really helps these shows stay, is people at the end of an episode going, oh my god, I need to pick up the next episode. That will be the butter for Wheel of Time right here. Next up is a certain political drama I think you absolutely must keep in, and that is the evolution and dynamics between the Black and White Tower and the White Tower's drama within itself. All of that must stay. I'm avoiding spoilers here, but if you finish the series, you know what I'm talking about. The drama in the Black Tower and the drama in the White Tower are some of the most engaging, badass, world-building storylines throughout the entire series, and they will be really important for having this whole wider world connect to an audience. Feeling these places crack and crumble in certain ways will lend weight on a world-building scale, and I'm so eager to see how those storylines will appear on the screen. This kind of goes without saying, but I'm just nervous nervous about it, so I'm going to say it, even though it probably shouldn't even need to be said. The Wheel of Time is probably most known for its incredible character scenes, these developments, these moments, like when Rand orders an execution. It's a huge step up for him. These little turns, these clear inciting incidents that show a character has evolved. I'm putting them near the top of the must keep, maybe even emphasize more. When it comes to characters like Rand, these scenes are fundamental to understanding where he's at in his progression, so I'm basically demanding they stay in. If I see even a couple of these key character scenes cut, it's going to really affect how I see the show. Final point, and this will again probably be controversial for keeping in or maybe emphasizing more, is how much the shadow is focused on. I've seen people saying that showing too much of the shadow can kill the dread or the ominous presence the shadow could bring. I disagree with how terrifying Trollocs and Myrddraal really are just at face value. I don't think viewers will ever be worn out of seeing them, especially Myrddraal, my god. So allowing the shadow to develop as a character, especially with the Forsaken and their dynamics and the Shadow Spawn themselves having these just creepy, ominous personalities, the fact that Myrddraal talk to people, and the brief kind of glimpses we see of the Dark One at times, I cannot stress that those will be needed to help this conflict, the building conflict at the end, feel so heavy. Because if the shadow's just this, oh, it's evil, it's in the distance, it'll just kind of feel like a Lord of the Rings ripoff, and it's not going to have the monumentous pressure that the Wheel of Time books have. It feels like the shadow can win at times, because within Wheel of Time, the shadow is its own character as a whole. Its influence and corruption taints even the biggest heroes in our story. So allowing it to come to fruition is a must for me. I really have to see that in the final product for the Wheel of Time. This is just my list. I'd love to see what you guys think could be cut and should not be cut in the comments down below. For spoilers, this comment section will probably be a minefield, so please be careful. Mark your comments with spoilers above. If they hold them, maybe divide them into spoiler-free or spoiler-filled sections. Up to you, but if you haven't finished the series, be careful of that comment section. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Dislike the video if you think everything I said was stupid and it's a bad video, but hit that like button if you agree I made some good points and you're excited to see a version of the show that resembles what I just said. And I hope to see you guys soon. Like and subscribe if you have not already, and have a good one, y'all. Peace.